I specifically sit down here I wanted to show you guys a few things, like a cup collection I had. And I'm going to do that really fast because my whole narrative has changed. Like this pressed glass creamer and sugar that I'd gotten. I bought this sugar container about a year before I got that part, and it just has little butterflies on it, and I just loved it. And it's pressed glass from the 1960s. And then and I keep telling you guys I don't collect this stuff, but I keep finding more and more and more in the cabinets. Anyway, these are cups that they put them in cereal, laundry soap, oatmeal, stuff like that, and you'd buy them and start collecting them to make a dish set out of them. And I believe that this is the one that came in Quaker Oats. Then I have a set of 4 cups that are collector cups, and these are from Sears and Roebuck catalog, and each one of the cups has a year. Like this one is Sears and Roebuck catalog 1906, and it has stuff from the catalog printed on the cups, and they're collector items now. I found them, all 4 of them, back up in the cabinet. Then I have the golden wheat cup and bread plates. I have one of the cups and 2 or 3 of the plates. I do collect those. I buy those one piece at a time. They're very sought after. And a few years ago I found a cup from the Corning Company, and it came from the laboratory where they make Pyrex. And this is a Corning Pyrex cup, and I just kept it because I thought it was interesting that it came from the laboratory. Then of course I have my cup that I won a couple of years ago from Giddy Up Gal, which I haven't heard from her in a very long time. And then I had found a Ricky and Lucy's 50th anniversary cup from 1951 to 2001, and it's California Here We Come. And then inside the cup, right here, like when you're taking a sip, printed inside of the cup, I don't know if you guys can see that, but it says, well, if you're not going, then I'm not going. But anyway, those cups and stories about them was supposed to be my whole video, but then I dug out these plates out of my cabinet, and these plates mean the world to me. I mean, these plates could get someone hurt. These are from the 1950s, and they belong to my grandmother. They're metal. And in the 1960s, when we used to go over to their house for dinner or whatever, all the kids were served on tin plates. She also had the white enamel plates with the red ring on them. I remember these things so well. I wanted the white ones, but I didn't get those. But anyway, when we went to their house for dinner in the 1960s, that's what we ate off from. The kids did not get any sort of glass plate or ceramic or china or anything like that. We ate off tin plates because our grandma would set us in a circle in the kitchen floor and put our plates in front of us, and that's how we ate. Because, there was not enough table space and all that, and I was okay with it. I was a little kid. I didn't care. I was waiting for the food. But anyway, it really got me to thinking about the 1960s. I think my camera's a little crooked. But anyway, it got me to really thinking about the 1960s. And so much started coming back when I started thinking about Grandpa and Grandma and things that we did when we went to their house. And back then in the 1960s, and my daddy didn't have a job, and we lived in a little one-room cabin in a town called Pea Ridge, Arkansas. Wasn't very big. There wasn't very many people lived there at all. I don't even know why it was even called a town. But anyway, one thing I can say for 100% positive, if it wasn't for my grandpa and grandma, I don't think us kids would have made it. I really don't think I'd be here today if it wasn't for my grandpa and grandma. And her name was Florence Young. And, well, marriage name was Florence Hitchcock. And my grandpa's name was Lewis Hitchcock. But if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here today. They kept us fed, they kept us bathed, all of that when Daddy wasn't working. And we lived in a little one-room cabin. I'm talking about like an old log cabin in the late 60s. And of course we didn't have electricity. We didn't have running water in the house. We didn't have a bathroom in the house. You had to go out the back door and go down this path to an outside bathroom. And I was between, I'd say, 4 and 6 years old. And me and my 2 older sisters used to get buckets and we'd go out the back door, and there was a path that went over a hill, crossed the road, and then you went up a little hill. And the man who owned the house and property that we lived in, he lived there. And he'd let us come up there and get buckets of water, and me and the 2 older girls would pack it back to the house. And that's how we had water. And I remember my mom, my dad at that time did have a job. He worked at the feather plant in Rogers, making $2 and something an hour. And of course back then that wasn't a lot of money. It was a lot of money when you had 5 and 6 kids at home. It paid the rent, and that was about it. Of course, like I said, we didn't have electricity or anything like that. And during the day while he was at work, it'd be pretty much just me and my mom, or my youngest one after that, because the other 2 girls would go to school. I wasn't even in school yet. I can remember my mom going outside and chopping wood with a chopping axe. And I remember one time she split her toe, and we had to take her to the hospital and get it sewed up because she hit her toe with a chopping axe. And we had live chickens all the time. And the one thing I'll never forget is my mom would go out and she'd grab a chicken by the head, and she'd sit there and spin that chicken around and swing it like that, and its head would pop off and the body would go flopping across the yard. And I know that sounds gross, but that's the way they did it back then. And then we'd dip them in hot water, clean them, and we'd had chicken for dinner. But man, I'll tell you what, it just brought back so many memories, bringing out those metal plates and thinking about the 60s. And we used to love it whenever our cousins would come over in the fall, because our front yard was nothing but giant oak trees. And when the leaves would fall, all of us kids would go out and rake them in one big pile, and we'd make a giant Mexican hat out of them, and we'd dance around it, and we just had a ball with them leaves. But we had no dog. His name was Curly, and it's the only family dog that I can remember, to be truthful. But one day we was all outside, and Mama had us picking up walnuts out of the yard to clean up the yard, and Curly come down the driveway, and he was growling at us, and he was just slobbering real bad. And I remember Mom holding her arms out like that and putting all of us kids behind her, and she was telling us to back up slowly to get in the house, and she stayed in the front of us. And Curly was walking at us, and he was growling, just slobbering, and it was horrible. Anyway, we got in the house, and then Mom come running in behind us, and she told us that Curly was sick. He had rabies. And I remember Mom waiting at the door, and when my dad got home, her yelling out the window. And I remember my dad coming in the house and getting his gun and shooting Curly, because there was no saving him. And he had gotten rabies from a rabbit that he'd caught out in the woods. And ever since then, we never had another family dog. But even at 5 years old, I remember that dog just like it was yesterday. We had so much fun with Curly. But that was the scariest day in my life. My mom standing in front of us, all of us, trying to keep that dog from getting to us, because he wasn't running at us or anything. He was walking really slow and just growling and slobbering. And Mom got us all in the house, and she came in and shut and locked all the doors. I mean, I don't know why she locked the doors. It didn't like the dog could reach up and turn the knob and open it or anything, but, you know. But anyway, we had to stay inside until Dad got home, and then she had to find a way to warn Dad, because he rode home with someone else. We didn't have a car. And she had to warn Dad about Curly. Our house, the way it used to sit, you'd walk down a little path and there was like an old shed here. And then you go on down there, would be an outside bathroom. And we'd went somewhere one night. I don't even remember where we went. And I remember coming home, and it was just about dark, and that shed was on fire. We never did find out how that shed caught on fire. But I remember pulling in the driveway, and that old shed was burning down. When we first moved there in the early 1960s, Mom found a couple of old dolls. They was every bit of 3 foot high. One had, they didn't have real hair. They had the molded shape hair, like the 1930 dolls did. One was blonde, and the other one was brown hair. And my mom kept those dolls for years and years, and she named them Gail and Carla, which is my two oldest sisters. My oldest sister that was killed by a drunk driver, her name was Carla, so my mom named the brown-headed doll Carla. And my next to the oldest sister had blonde hair. One of the dolls were blonde, so she named it Gail. And then when I turned a teenager, the dolls just kind of disappeared, and I never knew what happened to them, and I never asked Mom. I don't know why, I just never did ask. But I remember a lot of times Mom getting a chair, and the door that we had in the front of the log cabin had a window in it. And she'd push a chair up there, and I'd stand on the chair, because from where we lived, you had to go down the road like this and up, and the main highway was up here, and this was a dirt road. And my two sisters had to walk up there, and I'd watch them go stand and wait up there on the bus to come pick them up. And I remember that every morning. It was even before I was even going to school. And we had an aunt, she had 3 or 4 kids, but only one, the girl, was left at home. All of her others already grown up and moved up and got married. And I remember they would come to visit us, her and her daughter. They would not, if my mom invited them to sit down, they would sit right on the edge of the furniture. They would not sit on a chair or anything. They just barely put their butts right on the edge of the furniture. They were so fancy. And our furniture wasn't dirty or anything like that. But, I mean, we had what we had. But they didn't even try to hide the fact that they thought they were better than us. And they would just sit right on the edge of the furniture. And I always wondered why Mom didn't invite them out anymore and what they did. Now I know. But, you know, the 1960s was pretty rough because, like I said, Dad didn't have a job most of the time, and we didn't have a car most of the time. And if it wasn't for Grandpa and Grandma feeding us, we'd probably starve to death as kids back then. But at the same time, there was a lot of good memories, you know, and I don't know why. But when you sit down to think about the past, you always think of the bad things first, the rough stuff. But there was good stuff, there really was. And then we moved out of there in the early 70s and, you know, moved on, and the old cabin got tore down, and I still go by there today every now and then. It's still exactly like it was in the 60s, but now it's still an empty lot. And where the old cabin was, there's giant oak trees and stuff there now. There's nothing been built back in there. The land's just been left blank. But I enjoy going by there every now and then. But it was a strange time to think of in my life, and I can just remember. And you know, and like I think I've told this story before, that's back when I was 5 years old when I got hooked on growing a garden. And how it happened was Mom had gotten some overripe tomatoes one time, and she'd pitched them out the back door, and they landed up in the side. And if you remember me telling you, when you went out the back door, there was a path that went down to the outside toilet down here. Well, when I was a kid, I remember a tomato plant grew there, and I was fascinated with it. My mom told me what it was, because I didn't know what it was, but I was just fascinated because something had come out of them old tomatoes that she threw on the ground. And I remember I took care of that plant. I went out and watered it every day. I remember being amazed when flowers turned into fruit, and I took care of that tomato plant to no end. Bright red tomato on it. I get up from a nap one day, I go out there, and that tomato's gone. I thought I was gonna die. I was heartbroken. Someone killed my plant. They took my tomato. I walk in the kitchen, and I get a chair, and I'm standing up at the table, and there's my mom slicing that tomato, and I just start crying. I was so heartbroken that she had taken my tomato, and she was slicing it up, and she was trying to explain to me about what you do with it, and I didn't want to hear it. That tomato was my friend. That tomato was mine. It was my pet. And that was my start of loving to garden. And watching old beans grow that you'd dump out and stuff, I was amazed at what you could put in the ground and what came out of them. And at 5 years old, it was just stunning. But stuff that wouldn't be allowed in today's society. But, you know, there was a lot of kids, and my dad wasn't working, and what time he did work, it was just part-time. We had no car, we had no electric, no running water, nothing like that. You did what you have to do. And Mom and Dad, for some reason, I don't know why, they never was on raising a garden. I cannot remember one time my mom and dad ever putting a garden in. And you'd think with that many kids, you'd put a garden in, but Mom or Dad, either one, just wasn't anything on garden. So I take that me loving plants, loving the garden and stuff came from my grandmother, because it sure didn't come from my parents. But I believe that I got that from my grandmother, because she was one, she loved gardens, she loved raising chickens, all of that. And I remember we used to go to their house, and she'd send us kids down to the barn to gather the eggs for her, and we were scared to death of those chickens because we'd go to get the eggs and those chickens would peck at us. We thought those chickens were going to eat us. My grandpa and grandma always lived on a farm. They always had animals and chickens, stuff like that, up until I was probably about 20 years old, and they moved out of the farm, moved into a little house in town. No more farm, no more nothing like that until the time they passed away. So, well, guys, I hope you enjoyed this. I just wanted to sit down and share that with you, and I'm sorry that I got off the subject that I was originally going to talk about. But when I got to thinking about those plates and my grandma, it just, all these little memories started flying back. And I just thought they were too precious not to share. Guys, you have a good night.